Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week is part 3 of our Inner Child Work series. So in previous weeks, we've looked at how to listen to your inner child and sit with your inner child. And then also last week, how to open up a two-way dialogue of communication and teaching with your inner child. Well, this week we are looking at the topic of trust and why establishing trust through consistency of inner child reparenting is so very important as part of this process. Okay, David, so let's get to the heart of the matter. Why is establishing trust with our inner child so critical to success when we're doing inner child work?
Well, the straightforward answer, because that part of the mind that we're calling the inner child will believe that it's never been able to trust anyone. It will believe that it's been constantly let down, sold short, not continued. People have promised things and not delivered. And so they have this distrust of everything and everyone. And that's one of the reasons why they believe they have to try and control and be in control.
And so I guess what we're talking about here when we are referring to our inner child is the part of our mind which is almost locked in or stuck from our childhood years. So this lack of trust, this first time we doubted other people, we doubted ourselves. That happened way back in our childhood.
Yes, as I've said on many teachings, this age between 6 years old and 9 years old is very important. And I find that time for a lot of my clients is where we formulate our beliefs. And we formulate our belief by either mirroring and watching what our parents or significant authority figures in our lives are doing, but also from the experience that we are experiencing, what we are experiencing. But remembering we're experiencing that as a child. So the way we view that and being let down or being the victim, it could slip into being the victim mode, is very important for the inner child, because the inner child will fall into the way of thinking that I call poor me. Poor me. It never works out for me. Poor me. I always get let down. Poor me. I always get promised something and it never happens. I always get this. I should get that. And it goes against the inner child's expectation. And it builds up this mindset of constantly being let down, not being able to trust somebody. And if you do trust somebody, eventually they will let you down. And can I just say something? This normally will go into relationships. So when I work with clients on relationship matters, this idea of trusting, can I really, and I'll use words like show my vulnerability, expose myself. They'll use words like this, which is the inner child's talking, because they will then hurt me. I will be let down. I will be treated badly. I have been treated badly as in the past, and I will be treated badly as in the future. And this ties into this same type of inner child thinking and mindset. I'm just trying to bring it into how it kind of manifests in our normal life.
And you know what, David? I remember you saying that really before we can trust life, before we can trust other people, before we can trust things will be okay, we have to have this bond of trust with ourselves.
You know, Alex, these kind of sayings that we hear and people say, and they're very cliche, but that is, my goodness, so important. If we can't trust ourselves, if we can't rely on ourselves, and that's why I said in the previous teachings about communication, truth, honesty and integrity. And if we can't have that with ourselves, then really you're going to be, it's almost impossible to trust as anybody else, because what you're doing, you're putting them above you. You're saying, I can't do it, so I want you to do it to me. And this is where it gets so confused, because if you give the energy of that to other people, you're empowering them and disempowering yourself. So, I often talk about the old-fashioned balance in a relationship. It should be like this, but if you empower the other person and disempower yourself, and if you may not even be saying the words such as "I'm not good enough," "I'm a victim," "poor me," "feel sorry for me," you may not be saying those words in those phrases, but that's the image that you're giving, and then the other person takes advantage. And again, this goes down to what Alex has just said, that cliche. This is about loving yourself and nurturing yourself, and not expecting other people to do for you something that only you can do for yourself.
So, David, in terms of the inner child work process, when we begin to do this reparenting work, we have to remember that this may be the first time in our lives that we've actually truly listened to our inner child, that we've actually tried to hear the grievances and concerns of the inner child and address them as the wise parent that we talked about on last week's teaching. So for our inner child, this is new, because previously we've ignored the inner child. We've pushed away the inner child's emotions. We've avoided them. We've done everything. We've developed all sorts of manipulations and strategies to not listen to our fearful inner child. So initially we have to appreciate that even if the inner child starts to speak to us, it may not yet trust us. So what can we do to begin to really, demonstrate to the inner child that we are trustworthy, that we are going to be consistent, that it can rely on us, it can open up to us, make itself vulnerable, if you want to use that word, and that we're not going to let it down?
Okay, a couple of things there before I answer your question directly, Alex. The first thing you said, the inner child will also do something that seems very common. It will test us. It makes it even more difficult. It builds a barrier to see if you will climb over it. And this is where a lot of my clients have great difficulty. It will not just open its arms and allow you in. It wants to test that you are this time being honest. And I guess that brings me on to the answer of your question. In our model and in the Taoist teachings, small, consistent steps is what's needed. I often say to my clients, when I'm talking about meditation, and I think about meditation, what we're doing here now, you and I, we're meditating, we're focusing our mind, we're looking at a subject, we're thinking of all the areas and angles and perceptions. This is a meditation. And we should be doing that every day. And I'm only talking about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. You don't have to meditate for an hour. You don't have to interrupt your normal day's work. You could do it in the morning, lying in bed. You could do it at lunchtime. You could do it at night. But you should be able to allocate at least 15 or 20 minutes to this work. And when my clients roll their eyes and go, "Oh, yeah," and I say, well, this is what I don't understand. You have enough time to create anxiety. You have enough time to create stress and worry. You have enough time to go round and around on the carousel of despair, not getting anywhere. And I'm offering you a way out off the carousel, which is small, consistent steps. And this is the test that the inner child will give you. Will you be consistent? And I'm not talking about years, but I am talking about maybe 4 weeks. 4 weeks of consistent meditation, doing the work that we're suggesting in a calm, loving, concise, compassionate way, is the way to build that trust and that relationship with your inner child.
So just to be clear, David, what you're saying is sitting quietly, allowing your mind to settle and your body to settle through the practice of simple meditation. That is the way in which we can communicate with our inner child, do the inner child work. And what you're saying, we need to put that into practice 5 to 10 minutes every day, even if we're not kind of in the mood for it, just to demonstrate to that part of our mind that we're bought into this process. We think it's going to be worth it. We're willing to push through resistance, because then that inner child part of our mind will go, okay, this time's different. This time he or she isn't giving up so quickly. This is not just a fad or a craze. There are real changes going to happen here.
You've mentioned a phrase there that I hear constantly of my clients. This time it's different. What the inner child will actually say is, this time it's not different. And I'm going to test you. And that's what I said. I'm going to test you. As you start doing this work, I'm going to make it worse before it gets better. I'm going to say, I know you've been listening to these videos and perhaps you've got this idea, but I'm going to see whether you've really taken it on board. So sometimes this process will begin the first week, 10 days, to be even worse until the inner child starts to say, you're not giving in, you're not giving up, you are listening and you are doing the work that we're suggesting. And this consistency is very important. And let me highlight this to you. How many of you have been on a kind of a retreat or gone to a workshop for a day or a weekend or even a week and learned some really valuable practices and come back to your home, to your normal life, full of energy, and then by Wednesday, you've stopped doing it. And that's really what that part of the mind won't trust you. That's what it's saying. I can't trust you. I can't share the control with you because I can't trust you. You're just going to go back to what everybody else has done for me. Remember what I said on the last video. You have to be different to what your parents or authority figures did to you. You have to walk the Taoist. I love this saying. You have to walk on fresh snow. You can't follow the footsteps of what's gone before you. You have to walk a new path, an unknown path. You have to build up that consistent, small steps. And as you said, that could be just sitting quietly, relaxing, could be walking in nature. You could do this when you're walking your dog. If you like journaling, it could be journaling. It could be listening to one of our teachings and then spending 5 minutes kind of reviewing what we've said, seeing what you agree with, seeing what you don't agree with. It's about focusing the mind and dealing with the issue. Because remember, at the base of this, your mind, your inner child, your subconscious mind, your ego has unresolved issues. It has issues it doesn't understand, and it wants help in finding a solution so it can let go and be in your flow and reach your potential. That's why we do these videos. These are the life lessons.
And just to say, next week in our final part of this inner child work series, we are going to be looking at nurturing activities that you can do with your inner child as part of this process. But I'd like to finish on looking at the ways in which the inner child tests us, because I think it's good to have an awareness of, I guess, the pitfalls we may encounter, which mean that we give up rather than being consistent. So I guess our inner child, off the top of my head, the inner child likes to come to us with problems and grievances and emotional overwhelm when we're tired, yes. when it's really the most inappropriate time to do inner child work. How do we deal with that in a consistent way that means the inner child doesn't lose faith in us, but that we don't necessarily have a long conversation with the inner child when we're really tired or about to go to bed or it's in the middle of the night.
You're absolutely right, Alex. That's why I like the metaphor of the inner child, because if you've got physical children, don't they come to you at the worst possible time when you're cooking, when you're doing something, when something else is on and they want your attention? And so your inner child, as Alex has just explained, will do it in exactly the same way. So the number one thing that they'll do to test you is, of course, emotions, overwhelm, stress, tension, anxiety. These very intense, powerful emotions. That's the number one thing that they will do to test you. So first of all, you've got to be aware of that. And as we've said on the previous teaching, you've got to have the ability to see through that emotion. The example that Alex is given is very typical. You're just doing something else. Your mind is focused, something very, very important. And here's what we said again, like on the previous videos. You have to be truthful and honest. And if you can't deal with that at the moment, you have to say to yourself, I'm going to stick a pin here. I'm going to do what I'm doing, which is very important. But then you must go back to what it happened. And that might be in an hour's time, 2 hours' time, first thing the next morning. But the inner child will have to see that you will return to the issue that it has been brought up, and you will deal with it. The next thing you have to do is you have to make sure, as we said previously, the inner child will bring you a problem. We use on the last video, rejected. He will bring you a problem that it knows, because it's your mind, you haven't got that solution. You haven't got the answer. Then you must do the research, whether that's on Google, whether that's through our videos, whether that's through someone else's teachings, whether that's through our community. You must do the research. You must say to the child, this is a really good question, sweetheart, about abandonment, rejection, not being loved. Who can I trust? I don't know the answer to this at the moment, but I will find out for you. And do it. That's the key. Do it. You must complete it. You must be consistent. And that's how you build the trust with the inner child. Because remember, I talked about the pendulum. Really, what we're trying to do is the inner child's on that side, your Shen's on that side, and we're trying to bring them together. And we're trying to make a oneness. And we're trying to integrate the inner child and your Shen so you work as a team, that you're working towards the same purpose. I like the Taoist teaching on this, if you mind me sharing this with you. The Taoist teaching is, imagine two beautiful horses pulling a carriage. You don't want the horses pulling in opposite directions because the carriage won't get anywhere. You want them aligned and pulling in the same direction, moving in the same direction. And that's what we're looking for with the inner child and the Shen. Two beautiful, beautiful creatures coming together and pulling in the same direction. And that's why we do these teachings. And that's why we share these life lessons with you, because we believe in you. And we know that you can do this, else you wouldn't be watching these types of teachings. And it's just changing a technique, being more loving, being more compassionate, being consistent is what this life lesson is today. Don't start something and then give up after 2 or 3 days, because that's the problem.
I think we know when our inner child needs kind of dialogue, reparenting, when we're experiencing red light emotions. So, if we go right back to week 1's episode where we were talking about listening to the inner child, recognizing that when we're experiencing red light emotions, this is the inner child. The inner child needs attention. There's something going on here. So we can all become very familiar with that link and that connection. Oh, I'm experiencing red light emotions. I need to do some reparenting work. And being consistent about that understanding and acknowledgement. For a lot of people, though, David, the problem comes when they've done the inner child work, the red light emotions have died down, they enter a period of their life, whether it's a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years even, where they feel more balanced. The inner child issues seem to have gone away, seem to have healed, seems to be sorted. And quite naturally, we stop listening. We stop taking those 10 to 15 minutes out a day to do this self-care practice, this self-care work, just checking in with our inner child. We lose the consistency, and then we get really shocked when all of a sudden, out of the blue, bam, we're experiencing red light emotions because of something that's going on in our life.
So I'm going to challenge you is on a word you said there, Alex.
Okay.
You said we naturally, and I don't think it's natural. I think what is natural is the inner child and the Shen is a team together. And if it's not quite harmonized and aligned, then there's still a little work for you to do. So I don't think it's natural when you do this work and you appreciate just how wonderful your inner child is. He, she is amazing. I don't know how they've come through the difficulties and challenges and upsets that they've encountered. And once you appreciate that inner child, I think it is natural that you will never deny them ever again. I think it is natural that the two will be together, working together. And this then becomes natural and familiar. And so the idea of you slipping back will be almost laughable. And to be honest, that's what I experience with a lot of my clients who have done the work and maybe likes to contact me so often, and they say things like, I look back and laugh at myself. I can't believe I used to think these things. And so I know you can change. And I know the natural way is what you know. And once you've got this, this is like plugging into, this is empowerment. This is enlightenment. This is the way you should be living. And once you've got that, you would never surrender that for anything.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And like I said, please do tune in next week for our final part in this inner child work series, where we'll be discussing nurturing inner child activities that you can both do together to harness the creativity and beautiful joyfulness of your inner child, as well as encouraging ongoing inner child work. I will put a link in the show notes to the previous 2 weeks' episodes on listening to your inner child and inner child communication. So please do check that out. If you have enjoyed this teaching, please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also benefit. David works every week with clients all over the world via Zoom video call on exactly these sorts of issues. If you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one sessions, I will also put a link to those in the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you. So don't forget to subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.